Hello and welcome back to another video. It is May 19th, 2024, and it is a beautiful sunny morning at BNSF's classification yard in Pasco, Washington.
Good morning, everybody. We're in Pasco, Washington at the BNSF hump yard here. This is a major classification yard for the BNSF Railway in the Pacific Northwest, and parked in here we got a solid set of BN Cascade Green SD60s on. I think this is just some yard job, but very cool to see a solid set of BN power in 2024. I did not think I would ever see something like this, so this is really cool. We got a cut of cars here going all the way back into the yard. So today we're headed up the Lakeside Sub to Spokane, and hopefully get a lot of trains. So we're gonna get some pictures of this and then get out of here. We've got a grain train going in to change crews on the far track. 7415 trailing on this manifest. I think it just arrived. Then we've got one of the switchers with a couple of standard cabs working behind him here. They're about to go by the camera. Busy morning here in Pasco.
Driving east, we get a look at the Pasco hump, where cars are sorted and assembled based on their destination.
North end of the Pasco yard, we got an oil train here waiting for a crew change. I think these are the DPUs. I guess Ferromex units can't lead in the United States because they don't have PTC installed. So I haven't seen one leading in a while, so this is a nice illusion of one on the points, which is cool. But yeah, they're waiting here for a crew change. This way is the Lakeside Sub to Spokane, and that's where we're going to be heading next. Well, we made it about 200 feet before our first train's coming in here. Loaded grain train.
As I have mentioned, the focus of today's video will be the BNSF Lakeside Subdivision, which runs for 146 miles north by northeast from SP&S Junction in Kennewick to Sunset Junction in Spokane, Washington. Traffic consists of intermodal trains heading to and from Portland, Oregon, mixed freight trains to and from Pasco, and unit trains heading to and from terminals all throughout the Northwest. Cutting across the wide-open plains of eastern Washington, this busy single-track route has lots to offer the photographer as well as the rail fan, so without further ado, let's get out there on the main line. And we only make it another 3 miles outside of Pasco to Glade, Washington before another westbound makes us pull over. This time, another loaded crude oil train with more Ferromex power mixed into the consist. Finally, a break in traffic allowed us to leave Pasco behind and head into the wide-open plains of eastern Washington. Endless blue skies and little vegetation make for a beautiful drive along the Lakeside Subdivision. We got about 35 track miles further east to the tiny town of Hatton when green signals began lighting up indicating an approaching eastbound from behind us. Soon, an empty grain train came around the bend, heading for Spokane. After leaving Pasco, trains immediately encounter a steady grade as they climb into the high plains of eastern Washington. Eastbound trains are gaining overall elevation pretty much the entire way to Spokane, with the first hill topping out at Providence, milepost 89. The grade approaching Providence from the west is about exactly 1%, and while the grade at Hatton is currently slightly below this, it is clear that the motors on the grain train are pulling hard on the climb. East from Hatton, it's just an old 2-lane back road end to the tracks, cutting through the high plains with nothing else around for miles. The peace is only interrupted by the passing train, which we catch up with at Beatrice as it approaches the top of this section of the grade. After cresting the hill at Providence, eastbound trains enter a brief 10-mile downgrade to Lind before beginning another climb. We catch up with our grain train once again coasting downhill, still with little sign of civilization to be found. The double track that began at Hatton singles up at milepost 80 in Lind. The first siding east of Lind is Paja, located at milepost 73, where we catch up with the grain tray now embarking on another climb up a 0.8% grade. Waiting at Paja for the grain train to take the siding was a westbound ethanol tank train. With the line now clear, the ethanol train throttles up and departs Paja heading west. hopped on Route 395 heading back west as we wanted to get a shot of a train coming around the horseshoe curve at Beatrice. This ethanol train provided a great opportunity to do just that, so we chased him right back there. Back at Beatrice, the shot did not disappoint one bit. Knowing that the ground level shot wouldn't do this spectacular location justice, I got the drone in the air as the ethanol train creeped down grade around the curve. As more cars crest the grade, the ethanol train begins to speed up as it heads past our cameras. As the tanks continue to roll by, the drone allows us to see an eastbound approaching on the other track heading towards Spokane. As we get back on track heading east following the successful stop at Beatrice, action stays hot as we catch up with the eastbound grain train, engaging in another perfect meet with a westbound just outside of Lind. The bridge pilings that the two grain trains are passing under are the remnants of the Milwaukee Road Pacific Extension, which was abandoned in 1980 following financial difficulties, which eventually saw the railroad get bought out by the Soo Line in 1986. After slowing down to a crawl to allow the westbound to get onto the double track at Lind, BNSF number 7407 East now rolls through Paja, where it meets yet another waiting train, emphasizing how busy this single-track main line is. In just a few minutes, the Pasco-bound Manifest with a Canadian Pacific engine trailing second throttles up, heading west. With a slight break in traffic, we headed for a late breakfast in Ritzville, another 8 miles ahead. We timed it perfectly, as right as we prepared to leave town after eating, another grain train came flying west. From milepost 16 to Lind, westbound trains are pretty much running exclusively downhill. The eastbound grade between Ritzville and Sprague, located at milepost 42, is also quite mundane, meaning that this stretch of the Lakeside Sub sees some pretty fast-moving trains. We get a taste of some of this faster running in just 8 more miles. There is nothing but open fields and silos in Tokio, Washington, as a hot Z train out of Portland flies east. Staying put at Tokio, and in just a few more minutes, a loaded coal train comes west after holding in a siding for the Z train. Leading this train is one of BNSF's AC-44 C4Ms, a small handful of former Santa Fe-9s that GE rebuilt for the railroad a few years back. After the coal train, we're able to push east to Lamphier, where we find a flashing yellow signal for yet another westbound grain train. Some spotty cloud cover has set in by this time, making for some darker lighting conditions. Lamphier is located on a steep downgrade for westbounds with an average of about 1%, which can be seen as the grain train approaches us. We stayed around Lamphier, moving to the east end of the siding as two more westbounds were lined up coming at us out of Spokane. First to arrive was another manifest train heading for Pasco. Lamphier is home to a sizable rock loadout, which is where the Herzog ballast cars are sitting, visible at the beginning of the clip. The manifest train was being diverted into the siding at Lamphier to let the higher priority Portland Z train, which was running just miles behind it, go around them. just a few more minutes, the Portland stacks arrive. After the Z train, we bid farewell to Lamphier and with it the open landscapes of the eastern Washington High Plains. Treeless fields have given way to pine forests as we enter Cheney, milepost 16, where another grain train is heading west. Cheney is located at the top of a 1.15% grade for westbounds coming out of Spokane. From here west, it's mostly all downhill to Pasco. At Cheney, Union Pacific's Ayer Subdivision from Hinkle, Oregon, running towards Spokane and the Canadian border begins to parallel the BNSF Lakeside Sub into Spokane. By luck, this much less frequent line happened to be ripe with action when we arrived in town. First to arrive coming southbound through Cheney was an impressive loaded potash train from Canada with 2 engines up front, 2 in the middle of the train, and 1 on the end. If it wasn't already obvious from the motive power, this train originated on the CPKC Railway and was interchanged to the Union Pacific on the Canadian border at Eastport, Idaho. Most of the traffic on this UP line is Canadian interchange traffic, and this heavy potash train is no exception. In just a few more miles, we arrive at Scribner, Washington. About 2 miles back to our west, the Spokane Subdivision branches off the Lakeside Subdivision at Lakeside Junction and connects with the UP Ayer track to form 2 routes into Spokane, with the Lakeside Subdivision paralleling this track just to our east. In a few minutes, we are greeted by another UP train bound for interchange with the CPKC, once again sporting a solid set of power from the latter railroad. This train is diverging onto a connector track to take it on to the Lakeside Subdivision for the final few eastbound miles into Spokane. In about another 9 miles, we have arrived in Spokane, Washington at Sunset Junction, where the Lakeside and Spokane subdivisions meet the Columbia River Subdivision from Seattle. From here east, all BNSF traffic takes the northern Transcon towards Idaho. Additionally, Union Pacific trains also pass through the junction, utilizing the Spokane and Lakeside lines as previously explained. On the west side of this bridge, the Spokane subdivision branches off to the left and turns south towards Scribner and Lakeside Junction, which is where this grain train is heading. The Columbia River subdivision branches off to the right, heading for Seattle. In another few minutes, an eastbound comes into Sunset Junction off of the Lakeside Subdivision. Sunset Junction is a very busy place. Coming up next is a BNSF warbonnet-led westbound mixed freight in some unfortunate lighting due to an incoming thunderstorm. We relocated about a half a mile east to try and find some better lighting. While we were unsuccessful on that front, we did manage to find a UP train coming into Sunset Junction from Spokane. Trains run on an elevated viaduct through downtown Spokane, seen here as this BNSF westbound gets out of town just before the thunderstorm arrives. Arriving in downtown Spokane, this is where we will end our day along the BNSF in eastern Washington. However, the hotel for the night had a pretty cool view, so the action wasn't done just quite yet as an eastbound mixed freight met a westbound stack train right outside of our window. Serving as the DPU on the westbound stack train was one of BNSF's 25th anniversary units, which was a nice way to end an awesome day trackside in eastern Washington. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.